Midnight. Fluorescent lights. Two dryers humming like they had personal issues. My best friend standing across from me in one of my old college hoodies, trying to fold a fitted sheet like it had insulted her family. Her name was Sadie, and for 6 years she had been the easiest person in my life to be around, and the hardest one to look at too closely. We met because she stole my seat at a 24-hour diner. Not by accident. I had gone to the counter to pay. When I came back, she was sitting in my booth, eating one of my fries and telling her friend if he wanted these, he should have respected the risks of walking away. I should have been annoyed. Instead, I laughed. She looked up at me, took in the fact that I wasn't mad, and smiled like she had expected that outcome the whole time. That was Sadie. Bold in the most casual way, funny without trying for it. The kind of person who could turn a stranger into a habit before either of you realized it was happening. After that, we became the sort of friends other people always tried to rename. Late-night food runs, phone calls after bad days, texts that started with "Are you awake?" and never meant anything good for our sleep schedules. We knew each other's coffee orders, family drama, weird childhood fears, and exactly how to make the other one laugh when the mood was bad enough to feel permanent. Everybody around us found this suspicious. My older sister once watched Sadie reach across the table and take the pickle off my sandwich without asking and said, "You two either need to get married or stop acting like you already forgot the wedding." Sadie laughed so hard she nearly choked. I laughed too. Then we moved on, which had become our specialty. That was the arrangement. Something too close to name, so we didn't. Other people came and went. She dated a guy in med school who treated free time like an urban legend. I dated a woman from work who kept asking whether Sadie and I had a history, which, in hindsight, was a more intelligent question than I gave it credit for. None of it lasted. None of mine ever really got a chance to. Because sooner or later, every date had the same quiet problem. I would leave wondering why spending 3 hours with someone new had felt like work when spending 6 with Sadie felt like breathing. That is not a helpful comparison. So I stopped making it, or at least I stopped admitting I was making it. Then came the laundromat. Sadie's washer had died in dramatic fashion that afternoon. Not gracefully died. Flooded half the kitchen died. I found that out because she texted me a picture of 2 soaked bath towels and the words, "I am one inconvenience away from starting a second life in another country." I called immediately. She picked up and said, "Before you ask, yes," I cried, but only emotionally. By 9:30, I was helping her carry 2 laundry bags down the block to the all-night laundromat near the corner pharmacy. You know, I told her as we pushed through the door, most people would simply do laundry before a domestic breakdown. Most people are cowards. That doesn't mean anything. It means, she said, steering a cart with one bad wheel, I'm interesting under pressure. That was the thing with Sadie. Even disasters sounded manageable in her voice. By 10:15, we had claimed 3 machines, bought terrible vending machine crackers, and gotten into an argument over whether dryer sheets actually did anything or were just emotionally persuasive pieces of paper. I'm telling you, she said, tossing one into the machine, these are a scam. And yet, I said, you're using them. She pointed at me. That is not the gotcha you think it is. An older woman near the folding table looked over, smiled to herself, and went back to matching socks. That should probably tell you everything. By 11:40, most people had cleared out. The laundromat was nearly empty except for us, one college kid asleep over a textbook, and a man in the corner who had been staring at the same spin cycle like it had offended him personally. Sadie and I had taken over the folding table. She was standing on the opposite side from me, hair twisted up badly, sleeves pushed past her elbows, trying to tame the fitted sheet and losing with dignity. Why does this exist? She asked. To punish people. It's cloth, she said. It should know its place. That sounds fascist. That sounds efficient. I laughed and reached across to help her catch one corner. Our hands brushed. That should have meant nothing. With us, things like that happened all the time. Still, neither of us moved right away. Sadie looked down at the sheet, not at me, and said, "You know what my mother asked me yesterday? That is never a safe opening. She asked if I was ever going to settle down." That does sound like your mother. She said it while handing me zucchini bread, which somehow made it worse. Weaponized baked goods. Dangerous. Sadie smiled a little, but it didn't last. Then she pulled one side of the sheet tighter, glanced up at me, and asked, "Why are you still single?" I don't know what answer she expected. Probably something easy, probably a joke. Maybe some version of bad luck, or women are complicated, or I'm focusing on work right now, which is what men say when they want to sound stable instead of confused. The problem was, God, it was too late and too quiet, and too much of my real life was standing right across from me under fluorescent lights in my hoodie. So I answered honestly. Because every time I try to like someone, I said, still holding my side of the sheet, I end up comparing them to you. Sadie stopped moving. Completely. The fitted sheet slipped half out of her hands and sagged between us. I could have stopped there. I should have stopped there. Instead, because the truth was already out and apparently in a reckless mood, I added, "And nobody ever feels as easy as you do." The dryers kept humming. The sleeping college kid didn't wake up. Somewhere behind us, quarters clinked into a machine. But right there at that table, the whole room changed. Sadie's face did too, not just surprised, not embarrassed. It was worse than that. It was the face of someone who had been trying very hard not to hope for something and had just heard it anyway. "Ben," she said quietly. I had never heard my name sound like that in her mouth before, like it mattered too much all at once. She looked down at the sheet, then back at me, and whatever she saw on my face made her cheeks go pink. When she spoke again, her voice was softer than the laundromat had any right to deserve. "That," she said, "is not a best friend answer." Sadie looked like she wanted to laugh, panic, and run at the exact same time. Instead, she stayed very still, one hand still tangled in the fitted sheet, eyes locked on mine like if she looked away too soon, the whole moment might collapse into something smaller and safer. I didn't let it. "Yeah," I said. I'm aware." That's a terrible response. It's the honest one. The corner of her mouth moved, but it wasn't a smile yet. More like disbelief trying to decide if it was allowed to become relief. Around us, the laundromat kept going. Dryers thumped. Fluorescent lights buzzed. Someone's wash cycle ended with 3 cheerful beeps that felt weirdly rude given what was happening at our table. Sadie set her side of the sheet down slowly. "You picked midnight in a laundromat to become self-aware?" she asked. "I didn't plan it." "No?" "No, I planned on saying something smart and detached." I glanced at the sheet between us. Unfortunately, I was holding bedding and the truth came out first. That got her. A real quick laugh. The kind I'd spent years chasing without admitting that was what I was doing. Then she looked at me again, and all the humor slipped back into something quieter. "Ben," she said, softer now, "do you mean that?" I could have hedged, made it lighter. Claimed exhaustion had made me sentimental, but I was tired of watching every real thing between us get rerouted into a joke. So I said, "Yes. Simple. Clean. No place to hide." Sadie swallowed. The pink in her face deepened just a little, and suddenly I could see all the versions of this conversation she must have imagined before tonight. The easy ones, the impossible ones, the ones where I laughed and ruined everything. I hated that those were even options in her head. "I think," I said, "I've known something was wrong with me for a while." That lifted one eyebrow. "Wrong with you?" "You know what I mean. I'd like to hear you explain it." "Fair." I looked down at the folded towels beside us, and then back at her. I mean, every time I tried to date someone, it felt like I was grading them against a standard they didn't know existed. I smiled without meaning to, and the standard was you. Sadie stared, not shocked anymore. Just listening with that dangerous stillness people get when the thing they've wanted is finally happening, and they're afraid to move too quickly in case they scare it off. I kept going. "You're the person I want to call first. You're the person I want sitting next to me when something goes wrong. Half my week is built around whether I'm going to see you, and I've been pretending that's just convenience because I was too much of a coward to ask what it actually meant." Her eyes dropped for a second. When she looked back up, they were brighter. "That," she said quietly, "is a little unfair." "I know." "No. I'm really, You don't get to say something like that this casually. This is casual? You're standing in front of me holding a pillowcase like you just announced the weather. I looked down. She had a point. That does weaken the moment. It destroys the moment. Despite herself, she smiled. And once she smiled, it got easier to breathe. Not easy. Just possible again. I let go of the pillowcase and stepped around the folding table. Slowly enough to give her room. Slowly enough that if she wanted to turn this back into a joke, she could. She didn't. She just watched me come to her side like she was trying very hard not to hope too visibly. How long? I asked. Sadie laughed once under her breath. That's a rude question. Probably. She looked past me at the dryers, then back at my face. Since your birthday last fall. I frowned. Us, the one where my cake collapsed? Yes. That is not flattering for me. It wasn't the cake, she said. It was the part where you spent the entire night making sure everybody else had plates, drinks, chairs, whatever they needed, and then sat on the kitchen floor with me at 1 a.m, eating the broken pieces like it was the best part of the party. Her mouth softened. I went home and realized I was in trouble. That landed hard enough to make the room blur for half a beat. Because I remembered that night. Her leaning against my cabinet in socks, laughing with frosting on her thumb. The weird, stupid piece of it. You could have said something, I murmured. She gave me a look. You could have too. Strong point. I know. There was a pause after that, but not an empty one. It felt full in the right way. Like we had finally stopped shoving the same truth into different corners. Then Sadie asked, "So, what happens now?" I should have had something polished ready. Something romantic and smooth and worth the years it had taken me to get here. Instead, what came out was, "I'm really glad your washer broke." Sadie blinked. Then she laughed so hard she had to grab the edge of the table. That, she said, is one of the least elegant things anyone has ever said to me. I know, but it feels important. It does not. It kind of does. She was still laughing when she looked up at me, and I swear that was the moment the last bit of fear left the room. Because there she was, my best friend, my favorite person, the girl who had apparently been ruining her own dates by comparing people to me too. If the look on her face meant what I thought it meant. You're impossible, she said. And yet, that little smile again, warmer now, closer to home. Then she asked quieter, "Are you about to kiss me, or are we going to keep emotionally circling each other between industrial dryers until sunrise?" I smiled. That sounds expensive. Ben. Yeah, I said, stepping closer. I am. I touched her face lightly, slow enough to let her change her mind. She leaned into my hand before I even finished. So I kissed her. Soft at first. Careful. The kind of kiss that doesn't feel sudden at all once it happens. Because some part of you has been moving toward it for years without admitting it. When we pulled apart, Sadie stayed close, smiling in that stunned, private way people do when something they've imagined too many times finally becomes real. Well, she murmured. That definitely changed my relationship with fitted sheets. I laughed against her forehead. That feels fair. No, it doesn't. It feels ridiculous. You started with the laundry emergency. My washer started it. Convenient legal defense. She kissed me again before I could say anything else, quicker this time, like she was confirming it still felt as good as the first one. It did. A little later, we actually finished folding everything, which I think deserves more credit than it's getting. Sadie claimed I was worse at fitted sheets now because I was emotionally distracted. I said she wasn't exactly helping by smiling at me like that over pillowcases. An older woman collecting her laundry basket glanced between us and said, "Finally," as she walked out. Sadie buried her face in my shoulder for a full second. "That is so humiliating," she mumbled. "The public seems supportive." "I hate the public." Noted. A week later, not much about us looked different from the outside. We still did late-night food runs, still stole each other's fries, still argued over movies and dryer sheets and whether her plant looked healthy or just judgmental. The difference was that now she reached for my hand on the walk home, and I stopped pretending the best part of my life was just a very intense friendship. It wasn't. It was her. It had probably always been her. So tell me, if you were in my place, what would you have done when your best friend asked why you were still single? Leave it in the comments. And if you like this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.